everyone, it's Farin here. Going to be uh, discussing to some degree how how fundamental forces work uh, for us in our inner world. So isn't I guess isn't part of there's a script written out, but you know um didn't include this, but I think it might be important to include what the fundamental forces are um, by default, at least. Not specifics in terms of like actual numbers and the like, but in terms of what they are and what they do. Your fundamental forces are gravity, right? Everyone knows what gravity is. It's the thing that pulls masses together, effectively. It's slightly more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea, right? Gravity is what keeps you stuck to the Earth and keeps the Earth orbiting the Sun and the Moon orbiting the Earth and all of that, right? That's gravity, mostly. The vast majority of that force, of what's doing that, is gravity. And then you also have, and it's also what collapses the Earth into a near spherical shape, and the Moon, right? And it's actually one of the bigger tells for how dense an object is, right? It's often very valuable information to be able to tell whether or not something has collapsed itself into a sphere from its mass, right? That tells you how heavy something is, right? Things do not collapse into a sphere on their own until they hit a certain mass. So you know something is at least that massive if it's collapsed itself into a sphere. Or spheroid, right? You don't get perfect spheres, but close enough. You get close approximations when things get massive enough. They will collapse themselves into a near spherical shape because that works the best in terms of your force distribution, right? It minimizes the amount of gravitic force on any component of the shape, which is what you want. But yeah, so that's gravity in its simplest form, or simple explanation. You've got your strong and your weak nuclear forces, which are how atoms and subatomic particles are. So atoms, specifically the nucleus of an atom is held together, right? Between your strong and your weak nuclear force, you hold your protons and neutrons together, and your protons with each other to make up your nucleus, right? That's your weak nuclear force, and then your strong nuclear force is what holds the sub proton, the components that make up protons and neutrons, holds them together inside the proton or inside the neutron. It's very, very important. Without those working the way they do, you do not have atoms. You don't even have protons or neutrons, right? And then electromagnetism is the other key one here, right? Is what holds electrons to protons to give you atoms that aren't just ions, right? It's what makes atoms actually work. It's also the key component of pretty much all atomic bonds, whether well, okay, no, it's the key component of ionic bonds between atoms, right? Because ionic bonds are where an electron moves from one place to another, and that gives you charged particles, which then stick together because they're charged, right? One of them has an extra electron, the other one has lost an electron, so now they're charged, and they're all stuck together. That's how ionic bonding works, and a lot of bonding then between things as well. So then, like, your covalent bonds, obviously, sharing electrons, which is slightly different, but sharing electrons stick things together because of electromagnetism, because electrons are stuck to their nuclei because of electromagnetism. So, electromagnetism very helpful for all atomic bonds between atoms, and then also bonds between molecules as well, as often electromagnetic in nature as well, right? In that, things from Van der Waals to Van der Waals, for example, Van der Waals forces, right, which bond a lot of hydrocarbons together, right, is based on the minor polarities inside the small polarities that are formed because of the imbalance that you get in the covalent bond between hydrogen and carbon, right? That's your hydrocarbons, so you get a small amount of electromagnetism from the electromagnetic force from the very small polarities inside those molecules, right? So then they stick together because of those small polarities. It's more obvious with water, for example, right? Is relatively strongly polar as a molecule, right? H2O is relatively strongly polar because both hydrogen sit on one side of the oxygen in 3D space. It's not perfectly on one side because it's three-dimensional space, but they sit closer to each other by some angles than others, and that gives you a polar molecule, right? H2O is a polar molecule. It has poles to it, right? It has a dipole, so it has a difference in charge from one side to the other, and of course, then the water molecules all stick together because of that difference in charge, right? They align themselves up based on that. And of course, electromagnetism does other things like, the magnetic field around Earth, or is what allows a lot of computing, for example, right? Electromagnetism does an awful lot for people. It's very important. But yes, so that's it's not really a full explanation, but it's a very basic sort of rundown of loosely what they are and what they do, right? Yeah. And internally they work, close enough to the external thing, in theory, right? After all, right? Nuclear forces, you kind of need them to work pretty much the same, right? Because otherwise you don't have atoms, which is obviously a fundamental requirement. You need atoms for everything, so they need to work very similarly, right? And you cannot have a significant difference in how they work. It doesn't work, right? You also need gravity to work reasonably similarly, otherwise things just don't work. Your fundamental forces need to work pretty much the same. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's all. There's a minor variation to allow for the extra spatial dimensions, right? Because that changes how things work to some degree, but all it is a compensation for the change in spatial dimensions. That's definitely all that's going on, right? That's it. That's our video. Goodbye. Yeah. It's not like we've got manifestations of any of the forces internally as headmates. Nope. That doesn't happen. That they don't exist. Those headweights are not real. They cannot. They do. You do not need to be scared of them. They do not affect anything either, ever. Even though they don't exist, so of course they don't affect anything, right? It's definitely the case, and I'm definitely not lying about that. It's not like that potential for manipulation is used by us internally deliberately on occasion, right? It's not like any of us. It's not like there have been trades made with those with those manifestations to allow for things, right? That's never happened because they don't exist. Who on earth gave you the idea they exist? I don't know why you think they exist. They don't exist. So we can't make deals with them. We cannot have made trades with them to, yeah. It's not like we've got safe spaces inside that are guarded by Grav, who, changed around gravity to help ensure that nobody can get in without permission. Right? That never happened. That doesn't happen. Those don't exist. It's not real. It's not a thing. We have never had anyone be denied entry to somewhere by turning off gravity around them. That hasn't happened. Because it can't happen because you can't mess around with fundamental forces. So no, of course that didn't happen. What on earth gives you the idea that might have happened? Honestly. It's not like we have got things specifically set up to, mess with how light bends in spaces to allow for, to allow for changes in, think something along the lines of like the frosted glass windows you might have for a bathroom, right? To allow natural light in. Well, that's great and all, right? That's lovely, but you can't actually get a good look of what's going on outside. Maybe I want to be able to, maybe I want to be in the shower or in the bath or whatever, right? I'm in the bathroom. I can see the mirror from it. I can see the window. Well, I can't really see outside the window. I could put in a clear glass window, but then everyone can see inside as well, and I don't want that either. Well, with the right manipulations, actually, you can make a window that, well, I can see out just fine, but you can't see in. So now I can see out fine, and it lets in enough natural light, obviously, right? People could loosely tell what's going on inside, enough to know that there's, someone in there, maybe, right? Or whether or not the light's on, that sort of thing. But you can't see anymore. Why on earth, that's definitely not a thing. That's definitely not a thing that we've definitely never set up. No one has that inside because it can't happen because, again, we do not have any capacity to manipulate them. None of us do. Those headmates do not exist. Those manifestations do not exist. We did not name any of them. None of them exist. It's fine. You do not need to worry about it. Anyway. Yes. We've not done anything like that at all, ever. Anyway, yeah, no, it's not like we have a fun and varied space internally with, plenty of room around for changes to those as needed, right? What on earth would that be a thing? What gave you the idea that that would be a thing? I don't know. Did you not hear me? We can't change those things. Honestly. Do not trust everything I'm saying. Why would I lie about that? Honestly. It's all good. There's nothing to worry about at all whatsoever. Like, yes, this has been another long video saying that nothing is going on at all. Except, of course, as you can probably tell, yeah, no, we have headmates that are manifestations of some of those forces, and yeah, they can manipulate them in the inner world. It's interesting, of course, for them stepping out into this world where, well, we can't manipulate those forces here. They are, at least locally, very static. We can't tell how static they are across the entire universe on our own, obviously, but there's a good chance they at least work in many ways the same and can't just be changed on a whim significantly, right? There might be fluctuations or variations with distance or time, but they are not sudden significant shifts, reasonably ever. Anyway, I was expecting to draw a little bit more, but there we are. Catch you later. Signing out. This system signing out. Hope to catch you all next week. Please do remember to like, subscribe, comment, especially if you've got any questions you want answered. Be happy to answer them either in the comments or in another video. So catch you all next week.